The cover that you see right now, that's an image of Hawaii. And this, you'll see why in a second when I talk about these assignments that we use on professional ethics in our course. I should have said my name is Virginia Grande. You can pronounce that Virginia or the closest that you find most comfortable. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm a postdoc here at Uppsala University in computing education. So what is the context of this assignment? I'm teaching an introductory course for students who come, as you see here, to this building that you entered today for those in the physical room. And it's a bit of a salad course, if you will, because it is for students who are starting their masters in a computing-related degree, so computer science or embedded systems. We have around 70 students, maybe, depending on the year. And they don't have any prior experience of the Swedish educational system. So then here comes the salad, right? We're going to give you a lot of different competencies that you need in order to complete your degrees. You can imagine that the list there can get very long, right? So for this assignment I'm going to be talking about today, what we're focusing on is academic writing. Some of the students that take this course, they have never written a bachelor thesis, for example. So it's very important that they learn how to do this for their master thesis. Then ethics. We've been talking about it today from different perspectives. I'll talk about it more in a second. And it's also a very diverse group in terms of cultural backgrounds. So we make them work in groups and we make sure that different cultures are represented in the groups. So that's part of the learning outcomes as well. So many more topics than this. So if you're interested in this kind of course, you can talk to me afterwards because I could be talking about this for hours. And for this presentation, we're talking about a group assignments. They're usually groups of 4 students with a couple of exceptions with 3 students. And we teach them this ethical process that it's, you can see a paper and a book there. I think it's Thomas Lennerfors with colleagues. We have Mikael Laxoharju here in the back as well. And in this ethical process, we talk about 4 steps that sort of each of the steps involve the other steps. So there's awareness of what is the ethical problem here. We need to be able to identify that there's an issue. Then we need to see the factors for responsibility, who's the problem owner. And then we apply critical thinking. So we use different perspectives, different approaches to the problem. And finally, it doesn't matter how much we think about it, eventually we should choose an action, right? It's not just about thinking, it's about doing something about it. So I give them a dilemma that we call Andreas's dilemma about Chi 24. If you're not familiar with this conference, it's a major conference in human-computer interaction. And it's been quite controversial that the organizers decided to hold it in Hawaii in 2024. When this was announced, there was part of the community that was saying this can have a very negative impact on the island or the islanders. They talk about sustainability. There were many different factors being talked about in, for example, social media. So that part is a real scenario, but we give them a fictional protagonist. So we talk about Andreas, and this is a traditionally coded male name because we talk about equal opportunities later in the course, and we talk about how they might have been seeing this case differently based on that. But for now, for the students, Andreas is just an early career academic, and he's also a parent, and he's going to be out of a job soon. So going to Chi is a fantastic opportunity to network, try to find a new job and such. And Chi, again, is very prestigious venue. So if you get a paper there, really good for your CV as well. But of course, he hears after acceptance about these concerns and starts wondering, well, should I attend? What about how does this impact my family? Or many different concerns. So life is complicated. And the students realize that, oh, there's not just the right answer. They really need to think about different approaches. So you have the reference there for this matrix that we help them in class. We start with an in-class discussion where we have in the columns who or what is, for the move line there, who or what is affected. So Andreas himself, his family, other academics, the planet. It doesn't have to be a human actor. And then the different courses of action. So for example, if Andreas decides to fly to the conference, then if we see the, now I've missed this word, but if we cross column and row, the cell there would say that there's a negative impact because it's unsustainable travel. And then we have HM or L for high, medium, or low. So the more they start discussing, the students start adding columns and adding rows, and then start filling in the cells, right? So we do this in class in groups of, again, 4 or 3, depending, and they write this down. And I tell them, you're gonna write a report on your discussion, which is basically mostly the table, what is the method that you use, and so on. And then the second part of the assignment is that you're gonna use a large language model, LLM. And here I will stop, or I will be using both LLM and ChatGPT because all of them chose different versions of ChatGPT. So that's why you see the different or the same terms for this. But I said you're going to use it as a discussion partner. And with this phrasing, what I was trying to convey is that it's not necessarily everything right, what you get from the LLM. It's just you're going to get input from someone who's not a human, and you're going to use it in your reflections. But when you ask ChatGPT, how would you look at this case from the perspective of virtue ethics, for example, it also teaches you what virtue ethics is. So they're getting both the explanation and sort of the analysis of the case from that perspective. So we looked at virtue ethics, care ethics, and also professional codes of ethics like ACM or IEEE. And then you can also use it for grammar and phrasing, because at this point, we talk about academic writing at different stages, but for this assignment, I just want you to see what goes in each section of the report. So you don't have to worry so much about your grammar or using the exact academic language here. And then you're going to comment on your analysis and the LLM's analysis. And I was gifted this idea by Johan Snyder, who's here also teaching the course with me, also in our computing education research group. And he said, part of academic writing is also writing reflections. Why don't you ask them to write about their own experiences, not only in this course, but in their studies using LLMs? So the quotes you're going to be seeing here are both from the discussion on their analysis and their general experience with LLMs. So I'm going to be showing you quotes. I'm not planning on reading the whole quote, but I've added emphasis so that you can see what I find interesting. But I do include the quote so that you'll see a link to the slides later, then you can see the context, or you can ask me for more. I randomly assigned group identifiers, so they are not the same that you see in the course and such. And for each idea, I have an image, so that because I know there's a lot of information coming to you today, so maybe the image helps us get the main message of each of these categories, if you will. So if we think about a swimmer who's about to dive and go in depth in the water, that's one of the things that the students were talking about. I asked the students to write what prompts did you use to get the analysis of the LLM. And one of them was, why are so many international conferences being held on remote islands or faraway countries? This is not part of what I asked them to do. I said, can you use the ethical theories to look at this? But many of them said, well, we use it as a search engine. We just want more information, so we use it that way. I will add here on the side that the information that they get back might not be correct. That's another, yes, but I'm going to focus on the student perspective as much as I can. Then they talk in general that it's very good to use ChatGPT to get in-depth explanations. And one student so happy about it that says, my educational experience has been greatly improved by using ChatGPT. So very much a learn on my own, and this is very helpful, very much going in depth. I think maybe connecting a bit to Barbara's presentation, they talk about how their learning is now personalized because they can look at their own particular needs and use ChatGPT for that. Going back to the swimming, if you think about a competition where you're going and you have to go do things in a certain amount of time, now the students are like, oh, we get this super long text. I don't have time to go through all of it. But if I give this to ChatGPT and it gives me the key points, then that's fantastic. Again, I'm trying to focus on the student perspective here with me. You do your own analysis of what you think about that. Could be good, could be not so good. Okay, now we go to the ethical analysis matrix that you saw before. And now we think of a gift, right? The LLM gives a gift to the students and the students go like, oh, fantastic. I didn't even know I needed this. Or they go like, okay, what do I do with this, right? And there are nuances of that. So the LLM suggests options that the students didn't think about. So for example, it said, why don't Andreas could ask a colleague to present for him, so he doesn't have to go to the conference, maybe someone who's already there could present. Students happy, they didn't think about this, great help. Since ChatGPT is also explaining the ethical theories, they started to understand, oh, so virtue ethics involves seeking guidance from others. we didn't think about this. Maybe Andreas could talk to his group, and then they make a decision as a group. But then we come with what do I do with this gift when they get unfeasible options? So in the description of this scenario, it very specifically said online attendance is not an option. It hasn't been provided by the organizers. ChatGPT would completely ignore that and say, Andreas should attend online. Many, many times. Or then it would be biased ones. So one group says that ChatGPT provides a clear list of reasons and nuanced perspectives, but these are somewhat positively biased. It didn't provide any negative implications. But this group spotted that. So then they added another prompt and said, what are the negative implications of this course of action? Okay. But notice here, and in the invisible options, that the students need to realize this is not a good gift. Okay. So it's on them to do this filtering. Then they saw that some answers contradict previous answers or might be exaggerated. And I love this example. They ask what happens if Andreas withdraws his paper. And then ChatGPT said he will be forever isolated professionally because no conference organizer would ever invite him again. Like, don't do that. And then the students realized this is probably a bit exaggerated. But I can extrapolate some ideas from here. I can see that there will be some pushback from certain groups. They just need to figure out what exactly, not this answer. Okay. Then, if we think about, again, coming with this matrix and the courses of action and who is affected, the students saw the description as a bit of a box, if you will. So they realized that ChatGPT was focusing on the case description in a way they thought was a bit too restrictive. And here again, maybe that's what the teacher wanted, maybe not, right? So depends on what kind of assignment you want. So they say, or they write, the results presented by the LLM only arise from the description of Andreas's dilemma given as input, while they also came up with arguments themselves. But they realized that if they had prompted ChatGPT, then they could have gotten this extra or out-of-the-box analysis. Then they came up, since they had this broader perspective, they came up with options that ChatGPT didn't. So they started asking me in class and then doing this, what kind of research does Andreas conduct, right? Because it might be that if he has this amazing paper about sustainability that changes everything, and if he continues with this career, maybe it is worth it, the negative impact of attending the conference, if eventually the positive impact will be bigger. Then we have a blackboard with 2 + 2 = 5, and what I hope is a sheep. I'm really very much a city person, but I interpret that. I interpret that as a sheep. And I've been too long in Sweden to know how to pronounce that word anymore. So limitations of support for understanding. So some of them realized that the information is wrong sometimes and can be unreliable. Again, not all of them. And then they talk about becoming lazy researchers, because yeah, it does help. It helps us work faster, understand things from different perspectives, but we can't rely on this too much. So they try to do it carefully and also think critically. So they realize there are problems and they need to question the output they get. And then they also talk about the language that ChatGPT uses. So if you're trying to understand an issue, a topic, anything, and it gives language that is supposed to be sophisticated, but the students see it as unnecessarily complicated, that's also not helping them understand. Now let's think about someone going to a library, getting a textbook from there. That is, as opposed to the swimmer we saw before, like we go in depth and really understand this. They thought this is like reading a textbook, right? We give them the ethical theories and we get textbook definitions without going in depth. So it's helping, but it's not helping. And I really like the end of this quote. So again, the LLM is just adjusting to the ethical frameworks that it was provided with. Then it's about rote learning. It's about memorization concepts and just repeating them. An application of ethics without any critical thinking or awareness. It is ethics in a void with not understanding of context. So I think it's a very wise way of thinking about this. Then, as I said, it was awareness, responsibility, critical thinking, and outcomes action. So we have a picture here of several roads that go together, and it's humans walking and deciding which road they take. Why? Because they were, and I really tried this as well, ChatGPT doesn't decide a course of action. You can't force, or at my level, I couldn't force it to give me one course of action. It would present you, as the student says, with the two sides of the coin, but never decides on one. And the students thought maybe this is what the developers wanted. You don't want ChatGPT to make decisions on potentially delicate dilemmas. Quite a few groups were going in this direction, that ethical dilemmas for humans should be solved by humans. And then, since this is, remember, computer science students, they're also thinking about the implementation of ChatGPT. And they're saying that this first part, I'm not exactly sure what they mean. There is some form of humanly touch that is required as us as human, having past experience. Then we're in a state of mind to take the decisions. I think this was mentioned by Bohr in the morning, that LLM can take decisions, but they might change their opinions when you ask the same question several times, right? And then here's when they say, well, because it's implemented this way, this way, this way. So I have that quote if anyone is interested, but I thought here I leave it in this context. Okay, so the main message I got from seeing all these groups writing about using ChatGPT in their assignment was that they thought using it helps us focus on thinking, right? And I add here critical thinking. So they say that not only barriers as language, academic expression rules, and lack of inspiration for simple concepts are now easier to overcome with the help of AI. And here I remind you that these are students who are new here, who might have English as their fifth language, right? So not having to think about how do I phrase my report, what kind of language I'm using, but just being able to express their ideas was very important. And then they wrote serious and tricky issues such as biases are also more manageable. And here I was very surprised. We've been talking all day about how AI comes with biases, it amplifies biases. They had the opposite view in that we've seen that it helped them widen their perspective. They thought about perspectives they hadn't considered before. So they saw it as a good thing. So then we can focus on experimenting, thinking, and analyzing rather than writing. And then we call this phenomenon improved efficiency in meaningful research. So I think this kind of summarizes well what their experiences were. Again, I bring up the critical thinking part. This is something we really need to encourage. And I always talk about role modeling. So here, again, everything is role modeling. I think it was Natalie who talked about role modeling as a teacher, right? So same. And then I think you also mentioned this inequity that we see with groups that knew more about prompt engineering, for example, had more complex answers than students who have never used it. And they just wrote, can you analyze this from the perspective of virtue ethics? And they were done, right? So we need to teach this, or at least we need to acknowledge it in some way. Right. Thank you very much.